When my granddaughter Lila handed me my own phone, her small fingers were trembling. "Grandma," she whispered, "don't panic. Just look." On the screen, a single word blinked back at me. "Run." For a second, I thought my old eyes were playing tricks. Then I saw the message was sent from my own number. I hadn't touched the phone all morning. "Who sent this?" I asked, my voice barely more than air. Lila's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "She's coming," she said. Then she looked toward the window. I followed her gaze. Through the lace curtain, I saw Marissa's silver SUV speeding into the driveway, throwing dust like smoke. She parked too close to my mailbox, like she always did, entitled, careless, claiming space that wasn't hers. She was early. Always early when trouble was coming. My son Daniel had told me he'd be out of town on a business trip, but I knew better. Daniel never went anywhere without Marissa's permission. He was hiding behind her shadow, letting her do the dirty work. I should have felt fear, but I didn't. My pulse slowed instead of racing. There comes a moment when humiliation and hurt dry up, and what's left is something steadier, like stone. I placed the phone gently on the table, the word "run" still glowing, and pulled my cardigan tighter around my shoulders. My house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. Even the air felt like it was holding its breath. Lila tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, do you want me to call Mom?" "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "Go to your room. Keep your phone close. Don't open the door for anyone unless it's me." Her eyes were wide, but she nodded. She'd seen enough arguments to understand when silence was safer than questions. I turned back to the window just as Marissa stepped out of the car. Perfect hair, perfect lipstick, the kind of perfection that hides poison. She opened the back door and took out a brown leather folder, holding it like it contained the world. She looked around the yard as if she owned it, her sunglasses reflecting my porch. Then she smiled, the polite, thin kind of smile people use right before they ruin your day. I stayed by the window. I wanted to see what confidence looked like in someone who thought she had already won. The doorbell rang once, then twice, sharp, impatient. I opened it before the third ring. "Eleanor," she said, drawing out my name like it tasted bad in her mouth. "We need to talk." Her perfume hit me first, strong, expensive, suffocating. I stepped aside, and she walked in without waiting for an invitation. Marissa never waited. "I hope you're feeling all right," she said, setting her folder down on the kitchen table I'd polished that morning. "Daniel's worried. You've been forgetful lately." Forgetful. I wanted to laugh. I remembered every insult she had ever wrapped in sugar. "I'm fine," I said. "Would you like some tea?" "No, thank you," she said too quickly. Her eyes darted around the kitchen, checking every surface, every paper. "We just need to take care of something small, some signatures. Routine stuff. You'll feel better once it's done." She opened the folder. Legal pages. My name typed neatly on top. The title made my stomach tighten. Power of Attorney. I stared at it while she talked. About how busy life gets, how it's better if Daniel handles things. How I'll still have full control, though every sentence said the opposite. She pushed a pen across the table. "Just sign here, Eleanor. We'll handle the rest. It's what families do." I looked up at her. The sunlight through the curtains cut her face in half bright, half shadow. For a moment, she reminded me of the woman I once tried to love like a daughter. The one who smiled at family dinners and called me Mom. That woman was gone. This one wanted my signature more than my affection. I folded my hands in my lap. "Where's Daniel?" Her mouth tightened. "He trusts me to handle it." "Does he?" I said quietly. "Or does he hide behind you so he doesn't have to see what you're doing?" Her jaw clenched. "You're being dramatic. You'll thank me later," I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I don't sign things I haven't read." Her eyes flashed irritation. She gathered the papers quickly as if I'd dirtied them. "Fine. I'll come back when you're in a better mood." As she turned, a corner of one paper slipped from the folder and fluttered onto the floor. I bent to pick it up. My breath caught. It wasn't just paperwork. It was a drafted deed transfer. My house, my name crossed out, hers typed below. She snatched it from my hand. "That's not ready yet," she said sharply, stuffing it away. "You shouldn't touch what you don't understand." I stood, feeling something steady rise inside me. "You're right, Marissa," I said softly. "I may be old, but I understand enough." She glared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse. "You'll regret this," she hissed, walking out the door. I waited until her car backed out and disappeared down the street before I picked up my phone again. The word "run" still glowed on the screen, faint but stubborn. I walked to the hallway cabinet where I kept my documents. The binder labeled property deeds was there, but lighter than it should have been. I opened it. Empty plastic sleeves stared back. Someone had already been here. My hands didn't shake. I closed the cabinet, turned off the phone, and sat down at the kitchen table. The clock ticked louder now, like footsteps. Outside, the wind moved the curtain, and for the first time, I realized what the message truly meant. "Run," it said, "not away. Run before they erase you." And tomorrow, when Marissa came back with that folder again, I'd be ready. Marissa steps out of the car holding a folder marked "Power of Attorney." That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of Marissa's car still echoed in my ears long after the headlights disappeared. I sat on the edge of my bed with my robe drawn tight, staring at the spot on the table where she'd laid her papers like a snake shedding its skin. When I finally gathered the courage to open my laptop, I checked my email. At the top was one I hadn't sent, a thank you for your signature confirmation from the bank. Attached was a PDF copy of a document. The file name made my heart stumble. Power of Attorney, E-Graves, PDF. My fingers trembled as I opened it. My name, my date of birth, my signature, perfect, smooth, real, except it wasn't. I hadn't signed a thing. Someone had taken my handwriting, my name, and turned it into permission. For a long minute, I just stared at it. The glow of the screen painted my room in blue light, and I felt small inside it, like a ghost looking at the proof of her own disappearance. Down the hall, I heard Lila shifting in her sleep. That small sound reminded me why I couldn't afford to fall apart. By morning, I had a plan, quiet and careful. I called the bank pretending to be confused about an email. The young man on the line sounded cheerful, tapping on his keyboard. "Yes, Mrs. Graves, I see the document here. It was delivered yesterday by your daughter-in-law. All official. You're in good hands, good hands." I almost laughed. "Could you tell me?" I asked softly. "Whose hand signed for it?" He hesitated. "It says, Eleanor Graves." "I see," I said, forcing warmth into my tone. "Thank you, dear. You've been very helpful." After I hung up, I stared at the phone in my lap. Marissa hadn't wasted any time. She hadn't even waited for my consent. I poured myself coffee, black and bitter, and sat at the kitchen table. The folder she'd brought yesterday was gone, but her perfume still clung to the air, that cloying sweetness that always made lies smell like flowers. I took out my checkbook, my old bills, and the folders Henry and I had organized when he was alive. Every page carried his neat handwriting and my notes beside it. That was the real me, the woman who kept order when the world tried to take it. Lila came in, hair tangled, rubbing her eyes. "Grandma, are you okay?" I smiled the way I'd practiced all my life, the one that hides everything. "I'm fine, honey. Just organizing old papers." She nodded and sat beside me. "Is she mad at you?" "Maybe," I said. "But sometimes anger tells you more about a person than love does." She didn't understand, but she would someday. After breakfast, I took out my phone again. No new messages, no warnings this time. I went to the hallway cabinet and pulled out the green binder labeled Property Deeds. Empty. But at the very back, one plastic sleeve was half stuck, and inside was a photocopy Henry had made decades ago. With his signature and mine together, I traced his name with my fingertip. He'd known. He used to say, "If anyone ever makes you doubt yourself, Ellie, keep proof of the truth." I gathered that proof now. Birth certificate, marriage license, Henry's notarized will, every statement showing my ownership. I slid them into a new folder and placed it in the freezer behind a box of frozen peas. No one looks for dignity in a freezer. Then I dialed Nina, an old friend from church who had become a lawyer. "Nina, it's Eleanor. I need advice about a document someone forged in my name." Her voice sharpened. "Tell me everything." As I explained, her tone changed from concern to focus. "Eleanor, this is serious. If they filed that power of attorney, they could access your accounts, even sell property. I'll start with a fraud alert and request the original file. Do not sign or agree to anything." I thanked her. Before hanging up, she said quietly, "And keep someone close. People who steal names often try to steal everything else after. The day passed slowly and heavily. Each creak in the house felt like footsteps. I brewed another pot of coffee just to hear something familiar. At dusk, I noticed the mailbox flag was raised. Inside was an unmarked envelope. I tore it open. One sheet of paper. A printed notice from the bank. Account access updated. Authorized signatory, Marissa Graves. No letter. No apology. Just a statement of fact. I looked out the window toward the road. The same silver SUV crawled by slowly, headlights off, just long enough for me to catch the shape of her hair behind the glass. My phone buzzed again on the table. A text from an unknown number. She forged more than your name. I stared at the words until they blurred. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark with my papers spread out before me, the faint hum of the refrigerator behind me, the hidden folder safe inside. They thought they'd taken everything, my money, my trust, even my identity. But they'd forgotten something simple. I'd been invisible before. I knew how to survive in silence, and now, in that silence, I began to plan. By sunrise, I was already dressed. Sleep had refused me again, so I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with the documents spread out like pieces of my stolen life. The forged signature haunted me. It wasn't just close, it was perfect. The same slope, the same curl on the G in Graves. Someone had studied me, practiced me. I pulled out old birthday cards I'd written to Lila. My signature matched perfectly. That's when I remembered. 2 months ago, Marissa had insisted on helping me renew my driver's license online. She'd taken a photo of my ID and asked for my signature just in case. I hadn't thought twice. I'd trusted her with everything. The coffee had gone cold, but my anger burned hot. Not wild, but quiet, the kind of fire that waits. By 8 o'clock, I drove to the bank myself. The young teller smiled when she saw me. "Mrs. Graves, we weren't expecting you. Everything's been handled, has it?" I asked, setting my purse on the counter. "Then maybe you can explain why my name is missing from my own account." She frowned and typed something on her computer. "It says your daughter-in-law is your authorized signatory now. Didn't you—" "I didn't," I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp. "Get me the manager, please." The manager, Mr. Collins, came out after a few minutes. His expression changed the moment I said forgery. He led me to his office and asked to see the email. I handed him my phone. After scrolling for a moment, he looked up, uneasy. "Mrs. Graves, I'm going to put a temporary hold on all transactions until we sort this out. But I have to tell you, the signature looks valid. We'll need to prove otherwise." "Then I'll bring proof," I said. "Every line, every document, every note I ever signed," he nodded. "Keep everything. Don't delete a single email." On my way out, I saw Marissa's car again, parked across the street this time. Her window rolled halfway down, her sunglasses catching the morning light. She smiled and lifted her coffee cup in a little mock toast before driving away. I didn't react. People like her feed on reaction. Instead, I went straight home and gathered every scrap of paper I could find. Old leases, receipts, even postcards. Anything that showed my handwriting. Lila came home from school and found me surrounded by piles of paper. "Grandma, what are you doing?" "Proving I exist," I said simply. She tilted her head, not understanding, but her small hand found mine. "Do you want me to help?" I smiled faintly. "Yes, sweetheart. Help me find the truth." We sat together at the table, sorting through years of ink and memory. I realized then that the fight wasn't about money anymore. It was about identity, mine, hers, and the generations watching. That night, I placed all my gathered papers into a new folder. On the front, I wrote in black marker, "Originals, do not touch." Then I locked it in the drawer Henry had built himself, the one even Daniel never found the key to. The house was quiet again, but not peaceful. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, then silence. I turned off the lights and whispered to myself, "Let them come. This time, they'll find more than an old woman with shaky hands." They'd find a witness who remembered everything. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I sat by the kitchen window with my coffee, watching the fog lift from the street. My world felt smaller now, but sharper. Every sound meant something. The tick of the clock, the creak of the floor, the faint hum of a car outside. At 9, the phone rang. The screen showed Mr. Collins' bank manager. I hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Graves," he said politely, "could you come by the bank today? There's something you should see. It's about your accounts." My throat tightened. "Can you tell me what it is?" "I'd rather not over the phone," he replied gently. "You'll want to see it in person." That kind of careful tone only meant one thing: trouble. When I arrived, the bank looked too quiet, too polished, like a place that had already decided something about me. Mr. Collins led me into his office and closed the door. A second man was there, older, in a dark gray suit. He introduced himself as Mr. Harlan, the regional supervisor. "Mrs. Graves," he began, "we received a visit yesterday from your son and daughter-in-law. They brought documents proving that Daniel now manages your finances." "Brought them?" I asked. "You mean the forged papers?" Mr. Collins glanced down. "They also presented letters from a doctor stating you might be showing early signs of memory decline." For a moment, the air left my lungs. I had no illness, no doctor visits, no tests, only lies. I sat straighter. "And did they happen to bring me along to confirm any of that?" Neither man spoke. The silence answered for them. I reached into my bag and placed the folder I'd brought on his desk, neatly labeled, my own handwriting clear and steady. "These are the originals," I said. "Every signature, every note, every record. If I were confused, I wouldn't have kept them this organized." Mr. Harlan looked through the papers slowly. His brows lifted. "You kept everything." "I always have," I said quietly. "Because one day I knew I'd have to prove I'm not the one who's lost." He nodded once, the kind of nod that meant he understood more than he said aloud. "We'll need copies of these for verification. And Mrs. Graves, you may want to involve an attorney." "I already have," I replied. When I stepped back into the sunlight, I saw the silver SUV again across the street. Marissa sat inside, her sunglasses fixed on me, that same smile playing at her lips. I didn't look away this time. I simply raised my chin, unlocked my car, and drove off without fear. By the time I reached home, another envelope waited on my porch. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead, no signature, just one printed sentence. "If you keep fighting, we'll make the doctor's report real." The paper trembled in my hand, but not from weakness. I folded it neatly, placed it inside my originals folder, and whispered, "Let's see who ends up diagnosed when this is over." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of tires on gravel. Someone was watching, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to be seen. The neighbor who knew too much, 500 words. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I passed the window, I caught the faint gleam of headlights at the end of the street, vanishing before I could look twice. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, but the air felt wrong, heavy, listening. At 10, there was a knock at my door. 3 soft taps, not the kind of knock that demands, but the kind that asks permission. I hesitated, then peered through the peephole. It was Mr. Harlan from next door, my neighbor of 15 years. His gray hair was damp from the mist, his expression tight. I hadn't seen him in months, not since his wife passed. "Evening, Eleanor," he said, holding his hat against his chest. "Sorry to come this late. I just thought you should know. Your daughter-in-law came by today." My stomach dropped. "Here?" He shook his head. "To me. She said she was checking on your welfare. Asked if you'd been forgetful lately. Said she was gathering statements for the court in case you needed assistance." Court. The word echoed like a hammer in my chest. "And what did you tell her?" His eyes softened. "I told her I've known you long enough to know your mind's sharper than mine." But she didn't like that answer. I exhaled slowly. "What else did she ask?" He hesitated. "She wanted to know if anyone visits you. If you ever wander the neighborhood at night. She was fishing for something to make you sound unwell." Of course she was. Marissa wasn't satisfied with forged papers. She wanted witnesses, stories, proof she could twist. "Thank you, Harlan," I said quietly. "You did the right thing." He looked down at his hat. "Be careful, Eleanor. Folks who try this kind of thing, they don't stop until they get what they came for." After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of his words press into me. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, but my hands shook too much to drink. When I finally looked outside, his porch light was still on. a soft glow cutting through the fog. I realized then that maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. The next morning, I saw movement near my mailbox. A woman I didn't recognize, young, dressed in neutral colors, was snapping photos of my house. When I stepped outside, she lowered the camera and smiled. "Morning, Mrs. Graves, County Assessor's Office," she said. Routine inspection, but her shoes were too clean. Her badge too shiny. And when she turned away, I caught sight of Marissa's car, parked 2 houses down. Routine inspection. I waited until the woman left, then pulled out my phone and called Nina, my lawyer friend. "They're building a case," I said. "Then we build one stronger," she replied. "Start writing everything down, dates, times, names. Keep a log. We'll need it." That night, I opened a fresh notebook and began. Every knock, every car, every strange visit went onto those pages. The first line I wrote was simple. "Marissa is preparing for war, but she doesn't know I've already started mine." And as I placed the notebook beside my bed, I caught a faint glimmer through the curtains, 2 headlights parked across the street. This time I didn't close the blinds. I let them watch, because now I was watching back. 2 days passed without another visit, but the silence felt wrong. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm, the kind that listens to your heartbeat and waits for you to slip. I spent those days writing everything down, just like Nina told me. Every car that slowed near my house, every phone call that rang once and stopped. My notebook was filling fast, and still no sign of Marissa. Then, on the 3rd night, the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Mrs. Graves?" A male voice said. "This is Officer Benton from the County Sheriff's Department." My chest tightened. "Yes, officer. Is something wrong?" "It's about your daughter-in-law," he said. "She's filed a welfare concern on your behalf. Claims you've been showing signs of confusion and may be a danger to yourself." My knees went weak. "A danger to myself?" "Yes, ma'am. We're required to conduct a brief home visit tomorrow morning, just to verify you're safe and capable." I closed my eyes, gripping the counter for balance. "Officer, I assure you I'm perfectly fine." "I don't doubt that, ma'am," he said kindly. "But when a report's filed, we have to check. I'd appreciate your cooperation." After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, the phone still pressed to my ear. Marissa's plan was unfolding piece by piece. First the bank, then the neighbors. Now the law. I called Nina immediately. "They're sending the sheriff tomorrow," I said. "She's making it official." Nina's voice was calm but sharp. "Eleanor, listen to me carefully. They're trying to provoke you into panic. Don't give them that. When the officer comes, you stay polite, confident, and organized. Have your documents ready. Show no fear." I took notes as she spoke. Her instructions steadied me. "And Nina," I asked quietly, "what if they already believe her?" "Then we show them the truth," she said. "And if that's not enough, I'll make sure the judge sees who's really unstable in this family." After the call, I sat at my table, the one that had witnessed every betrayal these past months. I laid out my papers in neat stacks, bank statements, Henry's will, proof of every withdrawal Marissa had made. I even set out the fake doctor's letter she'd planted, the one I'd found in my mailbox last week. The night stretched long and heavy. Every creak in the house sounded like a warning. I didn't bother trying to sleep. I wanted my mind clear when morning came. At dawn, I brewed fresh coffee and sat near the window. The world outside was gray, quiet. Then I saw it. Marissa's silver SUV parked just down the street. She wasn't coming to help me. She was coming to watch me fall. I smiled faintly and whispered to myself, "Let her watch." Because by the time the sheriff knocked on my door, I planned to give them both a show they'd never forget. The knock came right on time. 3 firm raps that carried through the whole house. I took one deep breath, straightened my cardigan, and opened the door. A tall man stood on the porch, his uniform neat, his face kind but cautious. "Mrs. Graves? I'm Officer Benton. Just need a few minutes of your time." Behind him, a woman held a clipboard and a phone. I guessed she was the social worker Marissa had mentioned in her lies. "Of course," I said. "Please come in." They stepped inside, glancing around as if searching for signs of chaos. But the house was spotless. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air, and sunlight poured through the window. I wanted them to see order, not fear. Mrs. Graves, Officer Benton said gently, we received a report about your well-being. Your family claims you may be struggling to manage things on your own. I smiled faintly. That must be a misunderstanding. But I'm happy to clear it up. I led them to the kitchen table, where every folder sat neatly labeled: bank records, property documents, medical reports, fraud notices. The social worker's pen stopped mid-air. You organized all of this yourself? Yes, I said, sliding a cup of coffee toward her. I like to keep my affairs tidy. Officer Benton reviewed the first folder, his brows lifting slightly. These are all recent, accurate too. I check them every week, I said. Old habits, he nodded. May I ask when you last saw your doctor? 3 months ago, Dr. Ellis, routine checkup. Perfect health. The social worker scribbled notes, glancing up occasionally. Do you ever forget things, Mrs. Graves? Only names of people who lie to me, I said evenly. She blinked, unsure whether to smile or write it down. Officer Benton set the folder aside. Ma'am, everything seems fine here. You appear very capable. I am, I said quietly. And if you check those documents, you'll find a forged signature pretending to be mine. That's why this visit is happening. He exchanged a look with the social worker. We'll add that to our report. Outside, through the curtain, I saw a car parked halfway down the street. The silver SUV, Marissa. Watching, waiting. Officer Benton followed my gaze. Is that your family? It used to be, I said. Now it's my audience. He hesitated at the door. You'll be hearing from the department soon. But off the record, ma'am. You're not the one who seems unstable here. After they left, I stood by the window and watched Marissa's car pull away. She drove slowly, like someone who couldn't believe the performance had ended without her applause. When the street grew quiet again, I picked up my phone. One new message. No name, just words. She won't stop. Get ready. My reflection looked back at me in the glass, tired, steady, and finally ready to fight. Because the next time she knocked, I wouldn't just open the door. I'd open the truth. After the sheriff's visit, the house felt different. Quieter, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that waits for the next move. I spent the morning replaying every word Officer Benton said. You're not the one who seems unstable here. That sentence stayed with me. It was proof that truth, when organized, still had power. I called Nina, my lawyer friend, and told her everything. Good, she said. You made a strong impression. Now we make it official. What do you mean? I asked. We're filing a record, she replied. A legal notice that documents every act of financial and emotional abuse they've tried. It goes on file with the county. Once it's there, they can't twist the story anymore. The thought made my chest tighten, not from fear, but from relief. For months, Marissa had controlled the story. Now I could finally tell it myself, in ink that couldn't be erased. That afternoon, I drove to Nina's office downtown. The waiting room smelled like paper and lemon polish, a scent that reminded me of new beginnings. Nina met me with a calm smile and guided me to a conference room. On the table lay a stack of forms, thicker than I expected. These will establish a legal trail, she said. Every signature here is yours in front of a witness. They can't forge what's public. I read every page slowly. My name, my address, my statement of sound mind. It felt strange to defend my sanity on paper, but I signed each line with steady hands. Halfway through, Nina looked up from her pen. Eleanor, she said quietly, you understand this might go to court, right? I do, I said. And I'm not afraid anymore, she nodded. Then let's make it official. When we finished, she placed the final document into a blue folder labeled Affidavit of Financial Abuse. Seeing it in print made everything real. Before leaving, she handed me a small recorder. Keep this with you, she said. If they visit again, record every word. We'll use it if we need to. I drove home through the golden hour light, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Control. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw a note taped to my door. The handwriting was neat, almost polite. You think you're clever. Wait until the court hears about your condition. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into the same folder as the affidavit. Every threat was now evidence. Inside, I turned on the small recorder Nina had given me and set it on the table beside the phone. The red light blinked softly, patient and ready. I brewed a cup of tea, sat by the window, and waited for the next move. Because Marissa would come again. I could feel it, and this time, when she tried to twist my words, I'd have proof of every syllable. The return of Marissa, 495 words. It happened 3 days later. I was watering my plants when I saw her car pull into the driveway. Same silver SUV, same careful parking, as if she owned the concrete under her tires. I didn't move. I wanted her to see me through the window, calm, waiting, not afraid. She stepped out, dressed in a cream-colored suit, holding a thin briefcase. No folder this time. Just the confidence of someone who believed she'd already won. I could almost hear her heels before she even knocked. Sharp, precise, practiced. "Eleanor," she said when I opened the door. Her smile stretched tight. "We need to talk. It's urgent." "I imagine it is," I replied, stepping aside. "Come in." She walked in slowly, scanning the room like an inspector. "You've been busy," she said, noticing the neat stacks of papers on my table. "I have," I said. "I like to stay organized." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Good, because things are about to get complicated." She sat down without being invited and opened her briefcase. "Daniel and I have filed a petition. We're asking the court to assign a legal guardian for you. It's nothing personal. It's for your protection." I laughed softly, not out of humor, but disbelief. "Protection from what? From the money I earned? From the house I paid for?" Her tone hardened. "From yourself, Eleanor. You're not thinking clearly. All this paperwork, lawyers, accusations, it's not healthy. Daniel is worried sick." I met her gaze. "Daniel hasn't called me once." His silence sounds nothing like worry. For a moment she faltered, then regained her composure. "If you cooperate, it'll be easy. If not, the court will make it happen anyway." I folded my hands on the table. "Would you mind if I recorded our conversation? Just so there's no confusion later." Her smile froze. "That's unnecessary." "I insist," I said. I reached for the small recorder Nina had given me and clicked it on. The red light blinked, her voice lost its sweetness. "You think this will help you?" "It won't. You're embarrassing yourself, Eleanor. People already talk. The bank, the neighbors, even the police." "I'm sure they do," I said quietly. "But the difference is I have proof." "You have stories." For the first time she looked unsettled. Her eyes flicked to the recorder, then back to me. "You don't know who you're dealing with." I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. "Neither do you." She stood up, gathering her things in quick, stiff movements. "You'll regret this." I followed her to the door, calm as ever. "Maybe," I said, "but I'll remember every second of it." Her heels clicked down the porch steps, each sound sharper than the last. When her car pulled away, I pressed stop on the recorder. The silence that followed was louder than any threat she could make. Then I looked at the blinking light one more time and smiled. Because for the first time, her lies weren't just words. They were evidence. The morning after Marissa's visit, I drove straight to Nina's office. I didn't even stop for coffee. The recorder sat on the passenger seat beside me, still holding every word of Marissa's arrogance. When Nina saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just locked her door and gestured for me to sit. "She came back," I said, setting the recorder on her desk. "And she's getting bolder. She said they've filed for guardianship." Nina's eyes hardened. "Then she's officially crossed the line." She pressed play, and for the next 10 minutes the office filled with Marissa's voice, smooth, confident, and poisonous. The part where she said, "The court will make it happen anyway," made Nina pause the tape. "This," she said, tapping her pen on the recorder, "is gold. Do you know how many cases fail because people can't prove manipulation? You just captured it perfectly." I let out a slow breath. "What happens now?" "We get ahead of them," she said. "They'll try to use fabricated reports and false witnesses. But this recording shows coercion, intent, and mental intimidation. It's a pattern of abuse." I nodded, though my stomach still felt heavy. "She won't stop, Nina. She wants every penny Henry left me." Nina leaned forward. "Then we make it impossible for her to touch it. I'm filing a motion today for an injunction. That means until this case is reviewed, no one, not even Daniel, can access your accounts, property, or medical records." For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders ease. Nina wasn't just my lawyer. She was my shield. Eleanor, she continued, her voice gentler now. They're desperate. When people like that start losing control, they get reckless. So, you need to be careful. Don't let them corner you. Don't meet them alone. I can handle myself, I said quietly. She gave me a small smile. I know you can, but let's be smart about it. Before I left, she handed me a thick envelope. Keep this in a safe place. It's your legal defense file. Copies of every document we've filed so far. If anything happens, this proves everything. I thanked her and drove home. The day was gray and still, the sky heavy with rain. As I turned into my driveway, I saw it again, Marissa's silver SUV parked half a block down. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wanted me to see her. I parked, got out, and held the envelope close. Our eyes met through the windshield, just for a second. Then she smiled, a cold, patient smile that said the game isn't over. I smiled back, because for the first time, I had the upper hand, and tomorrow, her lies would have to stand in front of a judge. 11. The court summons. 295 words. The letter came 2 days later. A thick white envelope slipped under my door, stamped with the county seal. For a long time, I just stared at it. My name sat neatly printed across the front. Eleanor M. Graves. No mistake, no confusion. It was official. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear the edges. Inside was a summons for a court hearing. The words, "Petition for Guardianship," were printed in bold at the top. So, it was real. Marissa wasn't bluffing this time. I sank into my chair, letting the paper rest in my lap. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. For months, I had been fighting whispers, rumors, and phone calls. But now, it had a courtroom and a judge. I called Nina right away. "It's here," I said. She didn't sound surprised. "Good. That means we're ready." "Ready?" I asked. "For what?" "To end this." She told me to bring every file, every recording, and to meet her early the next morning. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the edge underneath. "They'll come armed with lies," she said. "We'll come armed with truth." After we hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the papers. The house felt smaller, like the walls had moved closer. Outside, the wind shook the trees, but inside, everything was still. I thought of Henry, of all the years we built this home together. I wondered what he'd say if he could see this. Maybe he'd tell me to fight. Maybe he'd tell me that sometimes peace comes after the storm. I folded the summons neatly and placed it in my folder labeled Evidence. Because this time, I wasn't the victim. I was the witness. The courthouse smelled like paper and rain. I stood in the hallway clutching my folder, the one Nina told me not to let out of my sight. She met me at the door, calm as always. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for years," I said. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Cold light, wooden benches, the hum of whispers. And there they were, Marissa and Daniel. My son wouldn't meet my eyes. Marissa, though, smiled like it was her wedding day. When the judge entered, everyone stood. My heart thudded, but my voice stayed steady. Marissa's lawyer went first, spinning stories about confusion, paranoia, and concern for the elderly. Each word felt like a needle. He spoke of fake incidents, invented phone calls, twisted kindness into evidence. Then it was Nina's turn. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She placed the recorder on the table, pressed play, and let Marissa's own words fill the room. Every threat, every promise, every lie. The sound of her voice echoing off those walls was the loudest silence I had ever heard. The judge's expression didn't change much, but when he spoke, it was enough. "Mrs. Graves appears fully competent. What I hear is not confusion. It's clarity." Marissa's face went pale. Daniel looked at the floor. Nina closed her folder and whispered, "It's over." But as we stepped out into the rain, I knew it wasn't really over. People like Marissa don't stop when they lose. They wait. I gripped the railing, the chill of the metal grounding me. She had taken my trust. She had tried to take my freedom. Now I had both back, and I wasn't letting go again. It happened the next evening. The sky was fading into gray when I heard tires crunching on the gravel outside. I knew that sound. When I looked through the curtain, Marissa was already at the door, standing there like nothing had happened in court. No shame, no hesitation, just that same practiced smile. I opened the door before she could knock. "You lost," I said. She tilted her head. "I came to talk." "You came to threaten," I replied. "Let's not waste time pretending." Her eyes flicked to the recorder sitting on my table. "Still recording everything?" "Only when the truth matters." She stepped closer. "You think this is over because a judge said a few words? You humiliated me in front of everyone." Daniel's furious. "You've ruined us." I didn't flinch. "You ruined yourself the day you decided to lie." Her voice cracked, the sweetness gone. "Do you know what it's like to lose everything? To watch the money dry up? To see your husband look at you like you're useless?" I felt the smallest pang of pity, but it passed fast. "That's not my fault, Marissa. That's the price of greed." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was sharp again. "You'll regret this." I stepped back, calm, steady. "No, I won't. Because I finally stopped buying love." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned, her heels clicking down the steps, echoing like a closing door. I watched her drive away, the red taillights fading into the dusk. For the first time in years, the air around my house felt clean. Peace doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes it arrives after a storm slams the door behind it. The next morning, sunlight poured through my curtains. For the first time in months, it didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the light touch every corner of the garden. The flowers I thought had died were blooming again. Maybe they'd just been waiting, like me, for a bit of peace. The phone stayed silent. No calls, no demands. No drama, just quiet. I called Nina to thank her. She laughed softly. "You did the hard part, Eleanor. You stood up for yourself. Not everyone does." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my notebook. The same one where I'd written every betrayal, every bill, every manipulation. On a fresh page, I wrote one word: freedom. I underlined it twice. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went out. The world looked new, even though nothing had changed. I went to the park, watched children run through leaves, and smiled at a little girl who reminded me of my granddaughter, Lila. For a moment, I wondered if Lila would ever know the truth, how her grandmother had almost been erased by greed. Maybe one day, when she's old enough, I'll tell her, not to shame her parents, but to teach her that kindness isn't weakness and silence isn't peace. As I walked home, the sky turned gold. The air was cool and kind. When I reached my porch, I looked at my house, not as a place I had to protect, but as a place I belonged. For the first time in a long, long while, I whispered to myself, "You made it." And this time, I believed it. It's strange how quiet victory sounds. No fireworks, no applause, just peace. Weeks have passed since the court hearing, and every day feels a little lighter. The house no longer feels like a battleground. It feels like home again. Sometimes I still catch myself listening for the sound of tires on the gravel, expecting Marissa's car to appear, but it never does. And when the silence stays, I smile. I spend my mornings painting, something I gave up years ago. The colors move under my brush like forgiveness itself, soft, patient, real. I've learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just says, "No more. I don't hate them. Not anymore." Hate would mean they still owned space in my heart. And they don't. What happened broke something inside me, yes, but it also built something stronger. A woman who knows her worth. I used to believe family meant always forgiving, always giving. But now I understand. Love without respect is just dependence in disguise. When people show you who they are, believe them. And when they try to make you doubt your own mind, hold tighter to your truth, because that's the one thing they can't steal. As I sit by the window, watching the sun dip behind the trees, I think about Lila. Someday, I hope she grows up knowing that kindness is power, and boundaries are love. And maybe, when she hears my story, she'll never let anyone silence hers. If this story touched your heart, don't leave quietly. Share it so others remember. Kindness isn't weakness, and silence isn't surrender. Subscribe for more stories like this one, because every voice that speaks truth helps another find their own.